10 Solutions to Stop Global Warming. Great article written by Catherine Wilkinson. You can find the article on her website, kkwilkinson.com. It's an article that appeared in the Real Leaders magazine. You can see the same article on their website, real-leaders.com. September 4th of 2019 is when this article came out. 10 Solutions to Stop Global Warming. These are steps that we can take as individuals and communities. There's an incredible mosaic of solutions, says Catherine Wilkinson, with benefits that go beyond stemming emissions to improving health, creating jobs, and shoring up resilience. We also see roles for every individual and institution on the planet. I very much agree with that. So here's our list. Number one is install rooftop solar. The first rooftop solar array appeared in 1884, New York City. I thought that was interesting. PV panels require no fuel and produce clean electricity. Rooftop solar is spreading as the cost of panels fall, driven by incentives. There's growth, there's ramping up of production, so it's becoming more attractive. And it makes sense that the sun comes in, goes into the panels, and in many cases it can go directly into your home to power your home, or at least it feeds back into the grid. So that's something we can do as homeowners. Number two, eat a plant-rich diet. I've talked about this many times on this show. The more plant crops that we eat directly is much more efficient from a carbon standpoint, a soil standpoint, a consumption of materials standpoint, as compared to cycling the crops through livestock and then consuming the livestock. You see, doing the livestock thing is very inefficient. Consuming the crops directly is very efficient. If cattle were their own nation, says Catherine Wilkinson, they would be the world's third largest producer of heat-trapping emissions. Why? Because cows belch the potent greenhouse gas methane as they digest their food, and because clearing land for grazing or growing feed is a leading cause of deforestation. Here we are in 2019. We heard about all those fires in the Amazon, and one of many reasons that they're burning all that vegetation and causing the deforestation is to create cropland to feed to cattle and other animals. Very inefficient way. So that doesn't mean you have to become a strict vegetarian, but every time that your meals get smaller around meat and bigger around vegetables, you're taking a good step. Number three on our list here is reduce food waste. This is an incredible number. About 1/3 of food that gets harvested is never consumed by a human for many problems along that path. 1/3 of the food we produce does not make it from farm to fork. The uneaten food squanders resources, seeds, water, energy, land, fertilizer, hours of labor, financial capital, transportation, and so forth. It also generates greenhouse gases at every stage, including methane when organic matter lands in the rubbish bin and then in a landfill, right? The food we waste is responsible for roughly 8% of global emissions, so we could easily knock that to close to zero if we pick carefully. We as affluent people, we might not buy foods that are slightly bruised or bent or buckled, and she mentions that in her article. You know, we can do better than that. Plus, she also makes the situation we can be composting at home, even if we're not composting to produce soil, but just not putting it in the landfill and so forth, just feeding it right back into the soil. Number four is design smart highways. So we have a couple of transportation things now. Look at the average highway, and smart is probably not the word that comes to mind. Asphalt, traffic, pollution, accidents. Highways seem to be the epitome of unsustainable. Efforts are underway to change that, leveraging imagination technology designed to improve emissions and safety. Part of that is having a great infrastructure that will encourage people to do public transportation as compared to driving individuals in cars and so forth. Here in Boston, we've talked about that. We put all that money in the Big Dig 20 years ago. Instead of funneling that into a better transportation system, I've had many people tell me that they would take public transit to get into Boston and the surrounding communities where they're working if it was more convenient, if it was cheaper, if it was safer, and so forth. So Boston is talking a lot about that too, and they're doing their best. Number 5 is shift to electric vehicles. There are 1 billion cars on the road today, which is a major source of emissions. Shifting from gas to grid makes sense. Now, of course, plugging into the grid, if the grid is going to be coming from fossil fuels, so it's gas and coal and oil, that's not going to help us all that much. But the grid is starting to shift to renewables, particularly solar and wind. So if we're plugging into the grid, powering our cars, that makes sense. And I'm looking into this whole system for my house, which is I have a plug-in hybrid right now, and I'm looking into solar and having the solar fuel the car. So moving that the next step forward, which I imagine I'll have an electric vehicle. And then if we can have solar into the house directly and then my car plugs directly into that, our cars do this, then we're really off the grid at that point, completely being powered by solar. Of course, that's the whole Tesla model. Number 6 is creating walkable cities. So the more that we are encouraging walkability to get from point A to point B and do errands and go to work and so forth, that's a huge cut down on emissions. Better now because it's going to reduce healthcare costs. More walking is simply more exercise as opposed to just sitting in transportation and so forth, never mind the stressors of commute and so forth. Number 7, this is an interesting one, and I like this one. Grow more bamboo. Grow more bamboo. So bamboo is a wonderfully sustainable source of building materials, furniture, and so forth. Bamboo has thousands of uses, including food, paper, furniture, bicycles, boats, baskets, fabric, charcoal, biofuels, animal feed, and almost every aspect of building, from frame to floor to shingles. And through photosynthesis, bamboo rapidly sequesters carbon, so it's a carbon scrubber. The more bamboo we're encouraged to grow, the more we're taking carbon out. It grows so quickly, we can harvest it quickly to make materials, and it's going to be a replacement for metal and concrete. They're now building buildings, skyscrapers, with bamboo that are safe, they're aesthetically pleasing, and structurally sound. So these things can be done. We already know that bamboo flooring is out there and bamboo furniture and so forth. And sure, we should all look at that as compared to other materials, which are going to be much, much less toxic. But being that renewable resource, I'm also thinking about when we're growing the bamboo, we're pulling carbon out of the atmosphere. Now, number 8 is very important. I had thought about shifting this and making this number 1, but I wanted people to stay with me. So this is number 8 on her list. And ensure girls' right to education. Securing the right of women and girls can have a positive impact on the atmosphere comparable to wind turbines, solar panels, and forests. How so? When girls and women have access to high-quality education, as well as reproductive health care, they have more agency that can make different choices in their lives. Those choices often include marrying later and having fewer children. If we summarize what's going on, the biggest polluter and consumer of fossil fuels are humans. If we have more and more people deciding to have smaller families, fewer children, or maybe no children at all, that's going to have a huge impact on the environment moving forward. So that's turned into this ensuring the girls' right to education, which gives them more empowerment to make those choices. And that's a very important situation for all of us to visit here. If we're choosing to have that, and I saw a couple of articles even this week where there are some millennials that are deciding not to have children for these particular reasons. I think that's very important. We need to look at that. Number 9 is enhance household recycling. Now, out of the 3 R's, reduce, reuse, and recycle, it's been pointed out that only recycling really took hold. The reduce and reuse really didn't, because if we reduce, we have a consumerism-based economy. So if we produce more stuff, there's more companies producing more stuff, we're buying more stuff, and the economy just keeps on cranking, so businesses get busier, people have higher salaries, and more stuff going around and so forth. So we have a consumer-based economy. That's kind of why, probably one of many reasons why the reducing situation never took hold. We now need to actually look at that. So reusing would be taking things that we have around here and repairing or holding on to them longer or giving more away. Furniture, clothing, and so forth come to mind, right? And so these are huge consumers of materials and have to be produced from raw materials and so forth. So the more that we can hang on to clothing and or give it directly away, same thing with furniture and other fixtures, that's going to be a huge reduction. Okay, but we still have recycling. Consumption and waste at the individual level contribute to climate change. The best thing to do is reducing them upstream. At the very least, trash can be reclaimed. Recycling is one means of doing that. Paper, plastic, and glass and metal comprise more than 50% of household waste, and they're all prime candidates for recycling. So if we all as a collective group enhance recycling methods and ask our city, state, and federal legislators to make sure that recycling programs are strengthened, that's going to help that whole stream. If we can generate more material at the end of the recycling stream to create more products, we're not harvesting them directly from the environment as virgin materials. Lastly is build with wood. Steel and concrete became main materials for commercial construction. Wood use declined, relegated to single-family homes and low-rise structures. But building with has a double climate benefit, as I discussed with bamboo. First, as trees grow, they absorb and sequester carbon, so dry wood is 50% carbon. So if we start building more with bamboo in particular, because it grows so quickly, and then wood in general, and go out and plant 1 billion trees, 1 trillion trees, and again, that could create jobs, and it's reforestation. That could go a long way. I wanted to thank Catherine Wilkinson for this great article, along with all the people that contribute to this type of information. Let's all work together. I'm Dr. Scott Fuller.